we're going to talk about CWD. And
He brought it up.
well, yeah, but some of our listeners might not understand what it is. So I want you to talk about it because they might get it confused with EHD, blue tongue, and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess we're going to lay that down before we really dive into it.
Yeah, for sure. Deer diseases in general, and I think CWD is the one, that's the hot topic, the one people have opinions on one way or another. But deer diseases in general, like the differences, especially EHD,
Yep.
blue tongue, CWD, what are those differences?
Yeah, so some really key differences between the two. So CWD is a fatal contagious disease. It's caused by a misfolded protein. So that's a big difference with hemorrhagic disease, which is a virus. And so with CWD, it's 100% fatal to whitetails. As I mentioned, the causative agent is a misfolded protein that can be transmitted from deer to deer through direct contact or through the environment if it's shed by an infected deer. It can cause long-term population declines with no sign of recovery from a population. So that's another significant difference between the two. Hemorrhagic disease is a viral disease that we see periodically here in Missouri. We usually have some reported cases annually. Some years, like 2012, we had a really severe year.
I remember that year.
Lost a lot of deer, but it's a viral disease. It's not always 100% fatal to deer. Causes rapid death. If you have an HD outbreak, typically those animals are dying, sometimes within a matter of days of contracting the virus, and people are finding them dead on the landscape, typically near water, near creeks or ponds. And so it's very, very visual, and folks can understand that there's been an outbreak really quickly. CWD is a very different disease as it progresses much more slowly in a population. After a deer gets infected, it'll go 1.5 to 2 years before it even shows any sign of disease. So whereas HD kills them quickly, CWD, it's the deer that get infected 1.5 to 2 years go by, then they'll develop clinical symptoms, and then they'll die, within weeks to months after that. So it's a very different disease in the way it behaves in the population. You can even have areas that have reasonably high infection rates with CWD and not see a whole lot of sick deer. Meanwhile, it can be having significant impacts on the population. So really a lot of key differences between those diseases. We do, sometimes hunters do get those two confused, but they're very, very different, especially in terms of the implications to our herd. Like we know HD's here. We know we're going to get even some years like 2012 where we get a bad outbreak, but the numbers may get knocked back by a bad HD year, but within a few years they're going to bounce back. It's really nothing that we're concerned about the long-term health of the whitetail population. CWD is the complete opposite. It's a very serious threat, arguably the most serious threat that faces our whitetail population, and even bigger than that, I'd say one of the greatest conservation challenges of our time outside of even deer management. So it's one of these issues where we go from a disease that was discovered in Colorado in the 60s to now 31 states have detected it. There's some portions of some states where half the adult bucks that get harvested test positive and a third of the adult does. We've seen in some states long-term declines in elk, whitetail, and mule deer populations with no signs of recovery. And so it has the potential to certainly devastate whitetail population. So extremely significant threat.
Now, one thing people bring up, and you talked about it, so was it Fort Collins, Colorado, or in that area? But we talk about CWD like the beginning out in Colorado. And you've probably been asked this a million times, but did it jump from sheep to deer maybe when they were doing, what were they doing? Scabies testing with sheep out in Colorado at the time in the 60s. You can find reports where it says it does. And so was it a testing going on? And it was almost, I'm not saying it was lab created, but did we kind of have our hand in CWD starting out there?
So nobody really knows, precisely the origin of the disease. We know it was first detected in a captive facility out in Colorado in the 60s. There were, deer that shared pasture with sheep. in that area where scrapie was present. So it's possible that, that CWD was, that's how it, jumped from, jumped the species barrier and, because those deer were sharing the pasture with sheep, that's possible. But we don't really know.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, people talk about it. Obviously, there was the presence of the scapies out there.
Well, and some of the modeling work suggests that it was probably out there, for quite a while before it was detected anyway.
Yeah.
And so, and so that's quite possible.
Sure. And then one of the things I thought was interesting, Chandler, we saw this, and this might be different, but one of the things that I looked into, so New York has had CWD, but I think they're one of the few states that have had it, and then they would say that technically they have eradicated the state after having CWD and then got rid of it fully, minus a one-off of a deer that they, I don't know, maybe in a captive herd or something like that. So can it be done to eradicate it, or is this something that, maybe they didn't have that many to begin with, so it was easy just to knock it out real quick?
It has been done, but on a pretty limited basis. So New York had a few positives. They were able to respond aggressively and have not had positives since those initial detections, and so
Gotcha.
we're successful at eliminating it. But the case that we see more often where it's been detected is oftentimes it gets detected, but it's been there for a while prior to that first detection. And so we see a lot of states that you didn't know they had it in an area, then they detect it, but it's been there for a long time, and the infection rate is high enough that eliminating it is essentially impossible.
Deer don't know state lines, though, either.
Yeah, they're not like, well,
I can't go across this line.
Can't go across here.
Yeah.
So that's why early detection is really important. We've had a couple different counties here in Missouri, Cole County in central Missouri, and Mercer up in north Missouri, where we had one detection in each of those counties, applied management action on the ground for a few years in each of those areas, and then never found any additional positives. So there are some examples where that does happen. The key to being able to eliminate it from an area is you got to detect it really early.
Yeah.
Because by the time it's entrenched, your only hope at that point is just to slow the spread. So the longer it's been there, obviously, the less your chances are of eliminating it completely. And then you shift into the management strategy of just trying to slow it down as much as you can.
And is that do you think that's where we're at is, we've had at least known cases of CWD since 2012, 2011, Mm-hmm. So are we at a point now, what are we, 2 decades in?
About a decade.
Decade in, yeah, sorry. Are we at the point now where it's just like we're just trying to slow it down? Or will there ever be a time where it's like we're going to figure this out?
So the ultimate goal, what everybody's hoping for in the long term, is some sort of vaccine or cure that gets developed. And that's an active area of research. There are folks working on that. It has not... we don't have that yet, but that's what everybody's really hoping for. Our management goal here in Missouri is to slow the spread as much as we can so that hopefully at some point down the road, if there were to be a vaccine or cure, our whitetail population's in a lot better shape than if we did nothing at all.
Yeah.
So I'd say our approach varies a little bit. We have areas where we may have an isolated positive in an area, and our goal would be to get on that as quick as possible and hopefully eliminate the infection from that area. We've got other areas of the state where the disease, even though it exists at relatively low infection rates, we've had enough positives that we know we're not going to eliminate it from that area. So in those cases, our management goal is to slow it down as much as we can, try to keep the deer herd as healthy as we possibly can for as long as we can.
Yeah. And you guys do when did the testing, is it during rifle season, opening weekend in certain counties that they do testing now?
11th and 12th, right?
For mandatory sampling. So that's part of our surveillance approach. And so we have 52 counties in the management zone. And this year, there's 39 of those 52 where if you shoot a deer on the 11th or 12th of November, opening weekend of the November portion, you have to take your deer to a sampling station.
Okay.
And
39 of 52?
Correct.
Okay. And then where are the sampling stations? Like, is there a place? So those counties, I'm guessing, are up on the MDC website. People can look at
the list of all the places you go.
And then there's where you can go take your deer to get to, and that's for antler deer only.
No, it's for any deer.
No, any deer.
Any deer.
Okay, sorry.
On those 2 days.
On those 2 days.
Right. That's mandatory. Yeah,
mandatory. Gotcha. So let's hope people are doing that. Follow that rule. See if we can figure this out. Whether you're on one side or the other, CWD's out there, so we need to get this under control.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a really important way for us to keep track of where we have the disease. You know, we typically will have 18 to 20,000 deer come through the stations in 2 days, so it's a big effort. Wow. We really appreciate the hunters doing that for us. As I mentioned previously, our best chances of slowing the spread are finding it early, and that's one of our really good tools for being able to detect the disease where it exists.
And what do you do? What's that testing process look like?
So when they come up to the sampling station, it takes a total of about 10 minutes. It's pretty quick. We get them in and out as quick as we can, and what we'll do is we'll just make an incision in the neck of the deer. Obviously, we ask first if they're going to shoulder mount it, and if they are, then we'll work with them on that. We won't ruin the cape, obviously, but other than that, we'll make an incision into the neck, and we remove a couple lymph nodes from the neck. It's quick, and then take some information from the hunter, and they're on their way.
And that's it.
That's it.
And you can...
Yep, and so the hunter will get, we send them away with a postcard that's got a unique number on that, and then they'll go onto our website, and typically within, most often 2 to 3 weeks, they can enter the number online and find out the test result.
If it was positive or negative.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, eating deer that are infected or it didn't get tested,
you're all good.
You're good.
So there's been no known human cases of CWD, but out of an abundance of caution, the CDC recommends that if you hunt in an area that has CWD, have your deer tested, and if it does come back positive, the recommendation is not to consume it.
Is not
just
to consume it.
Yep, just in case, even though there's not been a known human case of CWD.
I have a zombie apocalypse. If it mutates.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good recommendation. I probably, just don't eat it.
Would you do it?
Would I eat it?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No. There's plenty of chances to go harvest other deer.